Hello and welcome to this tutorial on how to make procedural flags in Blender. Today we're going to look at how to make these flags here. As you can see, they're slightly see-through and fully procedural materials, and the flags themselves are fully procedural as well. So if we look at them, they're all different and they're made with shape keys, so we can change how the flags look. So today we're going to first explain what a shape key is and how to use shape keys. Then I'm going to go into cloth simulations and simulate the flags and save them as shape keys. And then we're going to make the materials so the flags look nice. And that's essentially the tutorial. So let's get started by making a new scene and adding a queue and adding 2 loop cuts. So this is how to use shape. I'm going to leave them as is and go into the Object Data Properties tab, add 2 shape keys, select bases, and move them out, these 2 edges here, out a little bit. So now we have this kind of shape. Let's go into key 1 and go into edit mode, and we can move them in a little bit. So if we go out of edit mode now, you'll see it snapped back. What's happening here? Well, the shape, we have selected the shape key, and if we select the base shape key, the mesh data will change. So we can switch between 2 mesh datas, 2 shapes. So that's where the name shape key comes from. We can switch between 2 shapes, and we can select the influence of the shape on the mesh. So if we set this to 1, the influence will be 1, and if we set it to 0.5, the influence will be 0.5. And we can animate that, we can do whatever we want, and we can make really interesting animations and shapes with that. And it's very procedural, it's very handy. So now let's go into the flag scene. I have prepared a scene. If we look at it, I just did a little bit of prep work. I created a wall and the floor so we can put a flagpole there, and I don't have to waste the time setting up an HDRI and stuff. So let's start by making the flagpole. A flagpole is fairly easy. Let's make item. Let's make a 10 centimeter in diameter rod, 3 meters high, I guess, and move it up to touch the floor here. And then I'm going to create another cylinder, scale it down so it's a little bit larger than this cylinder, scale it on the z-axis and move it up. And if you look at it now, it's like this base and the flagpole. So that's essentially how you make a flagpole. It's very easy, very simple. So let's go on to make the flag. Let's create a plane. And flags are not all flags, but many flags are in 2:1 aspect ratio. So let's make that. If you want to make an exotic flag, that works just as well. You just have to model it. Like if you look at the flag of Nepal, it's a very unordinary shape, extraordinary, some would say. And you just have to model it. You can import it as a picture and model along it, or you can do whatever, but the technique behind it stays the same. So I'm going to make a 2:1 flag. So I'm going to make a loop cut in between here and delete this edge here. So we have our 2:1 aspect ratio flag here, and rotate it around the y-axis, around the 3D cursor, y-axis, by minus 90 degrees. And now if you look at it, we have a 2x1 meter flag that is upright. So let's move it up a bit and over along the y-axis a bit, so it attaches to the flagpole. And now to the most important part of the flag, we have to make geometry so the cloth simulation can work on the flag. And this is where you have to decide, depending on the strength of your computer and how long you want to wait, you have to decide how much geometry you'll make. The most important part here is the CPU. So this is my CPU. I have an i7-6820HQ. I'm on a laptop currently. And it's not very fast. It has 8 threads. And the more threads, the faster the cloth simulation will go, because cloth simulations are multi-threaded. So I'm going to make a loop cut here, so it's in squares. And then I'm going to subdivide it, and I'm going to make it 15 times. The more geometry you do here, the better your flag will look later. But at some point it just gets silly. So I think 30, in my experience, 30 is the most you ever need. I did some with 50 and they look a little bit better, but in my opinion, it's not worth the higher calculation requirements that it imposes on your computer. So I think 15 will be fine for now. Now we have to select the pins. So a flag is attached to the flagpole at 2 points. If you look at the flag, and I'll show you a flag right now. It is attached to the flagpole with little strings. So we have to select 2 points where we want the flag to fly at. Let's do that we select 2 points on the edge of the flag, go into the Object Data Properties tab, and add a new vertex group and call it pin. Then we press assign, and if we say select now, we can see it's these 2 vertices that are in this pin vertex group. So we will use that to pin our flag and make it fly like a flag. Next step is to add a collision to the flagpole, so our flag doesn't go through the flagpole, because that would be kind of silly, and add a cloth to the flag, cloth simulation. And if we play it now, it just falls, because obviously we didn't specify what vertex group is the pin group. So let's go into shape, pin group, and select our pin vertex group. And for good measures, let's go into collision and enable self collision, so it looks a little bit better. And if we play it now, you can see it bunches up like a flag, it falls like a flag. It's pretty nice. So let's next step is to change the vertex mass, because flag is fairly light, and later when we add our wind simulation, the flag weight is very important. So let's set this to 0.05, and if we look at it now, it will fall a little bit slower and it will bunch up a little bit differently, but that's fine. Next is to add a solidify and a subdivision surface modifier onto the flag. After the cloth simulation, that's important, because you want the cloth simulation to run on the reduced vertex data, but the flag to look prettier. You use a subdivision surface. So I think 1 and 2 is fine. And if we look at it now, it looks much smoother and much more like a flag than if we disable it. And the solidify modifier is just to give it some thickness for later when we do the materials. So if we deactivate the subdivision surface, you can see it's like fairly thick. So let's set it to 1 millimeter. I had caps lock enabled, and I think that's fine. If we look at it now, it just bunches up like a good flag, and I disabled subdivision. So there we go. Now we have a simple flag. The more geometry you'll have, the less this corner will be rounded. That's just a thing I live with, because I just tried to fix it and it made my flag act very weird. So now it's pretty much done. We just need a force field wind here. I'll move it up, rotate it around the x-axis a bit, maybe not around the 3D cursor, rotate it around the x-axis a bit, and move it along the y a bit, and make the wind go fairly straight. And let's see. Oh, I forgot. Strength 1 is very, very weak. So let's set it to 1000. I never know what to set this to. But 1000 seems to work. And there we go. We have a fairly nice flag. That's actually a very good result. As you can see, it's not very detailed, and we'll shade it smooth, but it's detailed enough to be recognizable as a flag. Again, as the more vertices you add in the mesh data, the better the flag will look, but I can live with this flag. So now let's save it as shape keys. For that, we go into our modifiers tab and go to the cloth, press on this little arrow here, and say save as shape keys, not apply as shape keys. That's important, because apply as shape keys would delete the cloth modifier, and we want to save multiple shape keys so we can combine them later into making as many flags as we want, essentially infinite different flags. So save a shape key, and I'm just gonna go through. As you can see, it's fairly fast because I had this little geometry. I'll just save 3 or 4 as shape keys that I like, and after I did that, I can delete the cloth modifier because we don't need it anymore. And now we can go into our object data properties tab, and we can see we have 4 cloth shape keys. And if we go into the edit mode, you can see the vertices are adjusted correctly, and if you switch through them, you can see the different flag geometries. But if we go out of edit mode, of course, because everyone here is at 0 influence or value, I think it's called, because of that, there's still this flag. So we'll use that actually to UV unwrap the flag. So let's select everything, press U, unwrap, and if we go into UV editing now, we can see that it lags. So I'm going to rotate it around the 2D cursor here. So press dot, 2D cursor, rotate 90, and I'll move it up. I'm gonna actually move it to the middle of the thing here and scale it along the y-axis, not along the 2D cursor, and scale it by 2. So now we took up the whole square. And later when we make the flag material, that will be helpful because we don't have to pinch the flag or scale the material, and it will work on every shape of flag as long as we did the same thing with the UV map here. So now let's go into shading and add a flag material. Go into material preview because that's faster than rendering it with cycles. And if we just set a base color, you can see it's just a base color. So let's add a little bit of a fun thing here. Let's add a gradient texture and add with Ctrl T, add texture coordinate and connect the gradient texture to the base color. Oh, we have to use UV. And now we can see it's a gradient. Yay! So now we can rotate it because most flags are from top to bottom. So rotate it by minus 90 degrees. And look at the principle of BSDF and add a color ramp. And if we look at it now and change the color ramp, you can see if you go to the end, it's the end of the flag, and the beginning of the flag is the beginning of the flag. So now we can go here onto linear and say constant, and it will look black. And we can change this like here and have a black and white flag, and we can change this to whatever we want. I'm going to make a few points here. So now we have this striped flag, and we can change the colors. For example, if we wanted to make a trans flag, I'm going to approximate it. So now we have a trans flag, and now if we distort it with the shape keys as we did before, you can see the UV coordinates map onto that. So we can add as many shape keys as we want and make the flag deform with that. So yeah, that's essentially how you create a flag in Blender. I hope you liked it, and I hope you learned something today. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye! I copied Louis Rossman's outro again.